In this video, we're visiting the Chaco Culture National Historical Park, which is in northern New Mexico. And I'm going to do a walk through each of the historical sites so you can see what the layout looks like, the trails look like, the paths look like, to see how accessible they are for you if you have any mobility issues. And so we'll visit several of the sites along the 9-mile canyon loop. That includes Hungo Pavi, Chetro Ketl. We'll do Pueblo Bonito. We'll do the Wetherill Cemetery, the Pueblo del Arroyo, and then we'll do Casa Rinconada community, and then we'll also make pit stops at the Chacoan Stairway and the Fajada Butte Overlook. And some of these sites are more accessible than others, and so I wore a GoPro camera, and I will show you those in order. So the first is the Hungo Pavi site, and each of these sites has a trail that pretty much goes around the outside of it, as well as some that goes through the inside of the sites as well. So many of the sites look like this. Or the paths look like this. They're just dried, sandy, gravelly clay with some rocks here and there. This one's not terrible. There's a little bit of an uphill there, but you can see what the site looks like. So I wore the GoPro camera, and I'll just be quiet while you take it all in. So at most of these sites, you can choose to walk in a little bit further to look at things a little bit more up close, but that's generally not an even pavement area. It's rougher. And you can see I've kind of sped up as I walk along here, but the back side's fairly flat here at Hungo Pavi. And you can still oversee the walls and see what it all looks like on the inside. So those in a wheelchair or having any kind of difficult mobility issues should not find this to be too terribly challenging. There's a bench in the back as well, which is a nice touch. And we'll just continue speeding along until we make our way out. So the next site we'll go to is Chetro Ketl, and that's just the next stop on the loop road. And you can see again there's a path that goes around the perimeter of it, and I'll show you what that looks like. So here it is a little bit sped up. It looks very similar to Hungo Pavi. It's kind of a sandy, gravelly path. It's a little bit flatter, I think, at least in the beginning. So I believe the full loop around here at Chetro Ketl is about half a mile. It goes up in a couple of little places, but it's pretty sandy, like you can see here on this section. And then the Hungo Pavi trail that we just did previously, the previous site, is a 1/4 mile loop. This one's about double that. So the actual ruins are up just a little bit higher, so there's a little bit of a climb, but it's not much. But if you're in a wheelchair, you might need a little assistance, where we just came up that little hill right there. So as you can see, you can walk around the perimeter of it, or you can go in a little bit closer and see what it looks like up close, like this wall, which is still standing after all these years. You can see another bench we just passed right there. So there's a bench for you to be able to sit down if you need to right there. Again, it's pretty flat, but it's kind of rocky in some spots. And this was taken in early February when it's still winter. So all the vegetation looks pretty scraggly. Here's where it gets a little bit more rocky and uphill, but you could go back and avoid this section if you wanted to. This area, you actually go through the ruins, and it's a little bit, it's definitely more uneven of a surface. another bench coming up right up here. Sandy again, and a couple little dips here and there. And we get to a little more gravelly, kind of flatter section. And that trail goes to look at some of the petroglyphs. There's a lot of petroglyphs along the cliffs there. I didn't show that on this video, but you can walk back there as well. You can go back there. And that's it. We're back out to the main trail. We just did a loop around Chetro Ketl, and we're heading back towards Pueblo Bonito now. These two sites share a parking lot, so they're pretty close together. So now we're going to head down the path to Pueblo Bonito. Pueblo Bonito is kind of the main site here at Chaco Culture Park. It is also about a 0.6 mile route around Pueblo Bonito, and you can go through Pueblo Bonito. I'll show you what that looks like in just a minute. But if mobility is an issue, you can kind of stick to just the main trail on the outside. And still get a really good look at what it looks like inside. So they shared a parking lot. Chetro Ketl and Pueblo Bonito share a parking lot, and now we're heading towards Pueblo Bonito on the 0.6 mile trail, and it looks a lot like the trail that we just came from. Again, this is another pretty flat area, so if you wanted to see just the main attraction, this is a good trail, pretty accessible, 0.6 miles, and you can really get a good feel for Chaco from visiting just this site. And at any point in this video, you can skip to any of the main sites using the chapters links. So just click on any main area and you can go to that site if you don't want to watch the whole walkthrough to each of these. So now we're walking around the front of Pueblo Bonito. It's huge. This is a huge, huge, huge site. Hundreds of rooms. And if your mobility allows, you can walk through the site, go through some of the rooms. I will say the doors and the entrances are very short, maybe 4 feet tall. So that's a factor to consider. And if you choose to go into Pueblo Bonito, there's stairs to consider. Here you can see some, but there's also ones just between each of the rooms. There's a gap where the door is, and some of those have stairs as well. But again, if you don't want to go through the middle of Pueblo Bonito with all these rocks and stairs and that sort of thing, you can just take that path around the main area on the outside and get a good feel for what it looks like. And that's all pretty flat and not rocky or anything like that. But if you go inside, there's definitely stairs like this one we're going down right now, and there's short ceiling heights that you have to go through. So it's a little bit trickier. I'll be honest, I got lost in here. It was kind of like a corn maze. I couldn't find my way out. once I found my way out, I took the path back around again. So back out to the parking lot, and it's pretty flat. If you want to skip ahead, if you've already seen this, you're not interested, you could just hit the next chapter. But I really feel like seeing it for yourself makes such a difference. We can tell you what it looks like and how easy it is or how difficult it is. But seeing it on video makes it easier for you to make your own decision, for sure. All right, so next up, we're going to go to the Wetherill Cemetery, which is an old grave site for a man that has a interesting past here. You can look that up yourself, but basically he did a lot of excavating, an amateur archaeologist, I guess. But he was buried here as well, so it's just kind of neat to see his gravesite. But this path is not as hard packed, it's a little bit sandier and some more ruts in this, so you could skip it if it's not of interest. And there's some steps up right there. And definitely some more uneven surfaces than some of the other places. Next up, we're going to go to the Pueblo del Arroyo. And there's the path again. You can see it goes outside the perimeter of it. And there's also some little trails you could take inside the ruins, but you can skip that. So there's a handicap spot right there, parking spot at all the entrances of the main sites. And this path is fairly flat on the way in. It looks a lot like the others. And this is a quarter-mile loop, so it's fairly short. So it's another option for those who might have mobility issues. Slightly uphill here, but not steep and not very long. I went inside the ruins, but you don't have to. There's a trail that goes all the way around the perimeter. And so I think this is a pretty good option to see what the sites look like if you don't want to have to go very far. Because I would say it's probably the closest to the parking lot. There's a couple little rises. As you see, we're going uphill a little bit, but it's not steep. definitely a little trickier footing on the inside of the ruins, so the outside is a good option if you want something a little easier. Continuing on the perimeter trail right now, just going around the back side of the ruins. There's a bench back here. Nice little place to sit down and check out the ruins. And you can see the parking lot, how close we are to that. So this is definitely the closest set of ruins here at Chaco from the parking area. So if you want to walk the least, this is a good option. All right, so next up, number 6, we're going to the Casa Rinconada community. This is a giant kiva, a little bit off the trail. It's a half-mile loop, and it's not accessible. I think this is probably the least accessible of all the sites I'll show you. So it's uphill. It's the terrain's rougher. It's not as smooth, and there's rockier, and there's a couple little steps, as you can see here. So if you were looking we're looking for one to skip, this would probably be my suggestion, because it's the least friendly for those with mobility issues. So the big attraction here at Rinconada is the giant kiva, which I'll show you in just a second. But there's also some smaller ruins that you can walk to as well on the same loop. There's a bench over there. You just saw that. So once you get to the top to look down into the kiva, there's a bench right there. And you don't have to do the area I just did. You can skip this and kind of continue back to the car. But if you choose to, there's a loop that goes all the way around a little bit further, and it passes some of the other ruins as well. But again, the terrain is definitely more difficult. And there's another bench on this side. So I'm going to walk down and do the full loop, but obviously you don't have to do that. And the final two sites that I'll show you are really just pullouts along the main loop road. So you can stop and see things from your car. I'll show you what I'm talking about. So the first one is the Chacoan Stairway. And so it's just like 0.2 miles from Rinconada. And it's right there. I was on a bicycle, so you can see me biking right there. But that's the pullout. It's just a little side area to park for a second off the main road, and then you look up into the cliff and you should be able to see the Chacoan Stairway. Bring binoculars. I found it really hard to see it. And then the final stop is the Fajada Butte Overlook. This is just past the visitor center. Again, it's just another little pullout area, but there's some picnic benches. There's a telescope there and some more information. And so you can see what it looks like. It's gravelly, but there's a way to get down to have a picnic.